I might be getting something wrong here. I feel like we really got to go back and, like, dissect crabs. Welcome to Wow of True, the podcast of your wildest memes. We're your one-stop internet culture shop, here to dissect what's going viral, why we care, and how this might affect our real human lives. I'm not Isabel, and I'm Amanda. Anyone could be famous on the internet, so why not just me? Yeah, so you might notice Isabel's not here. Right before we were going to record, Isabel had some illness-related things that prevented her from being here. She's sick. That is what I'm trying to say. And, sometimes you can't really book a guest with, like, a few hours' notice. So it's just me, baby. So sorry for all the Isabel heads out there. I feel like there's a lot of, like, sci-fi to WoW True pipeline people. I'm sorry you have to get to know me. Hi, it's me, Amanda. Thank you for listening to our podcast. It truly means a lot to me. And sorry that I don't know as much about science fiction and the law. But hey, we're gonna make do. We're gonna do this together. You and me, listener, Craig. This is very vulnerable. Be nice. Now I know that if I fuck up, it's totally on me. I can't blame it on Isabel. Not that I blame it on Isabel, but Okay, anyway. Let's start out with talking about Henry Kissinger's death. So, every time a celebrity dies, you probably see someone post that meme of death, like the actual, like, the guy, Death, playing a crane game, and then Death says something like, "Tina Turner? Is Henry Kissinger even in here?" Like, the jokes that he's, like, playing the crane game and, like, trying to get Henry Kissinger. Anyway, why are we making so many memes about this man dying? So, Henry Kissinger, former U.S. Secretary of State, finally died at age 100 this week. It was like a holiday for the internet, and listen, we don't have time to go into all the intricacies, but Rolling Stone wrote a great and scathing obituary about Henry Kissinger, and he was never tried as a war criminal, but there are a lot of historical arguments about why Henry Kissinger should be considered a war criminal. His policies and actions directly led to devastation in places as far-reaching as Bangladesh, East Timor, Argentina, Chile, Vietnam, Cambodia, and, wait for it, Laos. Like, that's a lot of countries. I don't need to tell you, but to quantify it a little bit, a Yale history professor, Greg Grandin, calculated that Kissinger is at least partially responsible for the deaths of 3 to 4 million people. So, I mean, yeah, I get the argument that celebrating people's death is, like, kind of fucked up. However, 3 to 4 million people. And, because I'm me, we all know I just randomly have to talk about how I lived in Laos. But in all seriousness, I mean, everyone's sharing that Anthony Bourdain quote about, like, if you've ever gone to Cambodia, you are going to want to kill Henry Kissinger with your bare hands. And I have been to Cambodia and have, like, been to museums about the Khmer Rouge, and it's terrifying. While living in Laos, you do genuinely feel the impact of the US's bombing of Laos. Like, Laos is the most heavily bombed country per capita. This happened under Henry Kissinger's watch. There are still 80 million unexploded bombs in Laos. Like, there's so many instances of, like, a rural Lao child is, like, playing in the field as children do, and then they see, like, a little circular thing, and they're like, what's that? And they touch it, and it fucking explodes because it's a fucking bomb that was dropped under Henry Kissinger and Richard Nixon. Like, still, there are millions of bombs in Laos. Like, when you go hiking in Laos, like, there are signs everywhere, like, do not fucking go off the trail. Because, like, you can still just run into bombs. Like, it's fucking crazy. And then all these other countries outside of Southeast Asia where his influence also is, like, so prominent and violent. Anyway, Yeah, so people are celebrating the death of Henry Kissinger, and honestly, I don't feel bad for him. Like, come on. So, Slate put it, the death of Kissinger is a once-in-a-lifetime shit-posting event. It's like when Donald Trump got COVID in the lead up to the 2020 election. For me personally, I found out about Henry Kissinger's death while I was watching the Whitney Houston Cinderella with some friends, very like chill evening, and then I saw the push notification, was like, oh my god. I removed Twitter from my phone because I just don't need that in my life anymore, but when Henry Kissinger died, I kinda regretted it, but I did refrain from downloading it. However, I did like go on my computer and go on Twitter on my computer. Sorry. Some crazy things that happened. There's an account called Did Kissinger Die on Twitter, which someone has spent the last 2 years tweeting every so often and just saying, nope, no, not yet, nah. But finally, whoever runs this account got to fire off the most rewarding tweet. When Kissinger died, they just wrote, yes, in all caps, baby. And that tweet has 22 million views and 451,000 likes at the time of recording. Another reaction I loved, which I might be getting something wrong here. I feel like we really got to go back and like dissect crabs. So, thousands of people congregated in the comments of a YouTube video from 5 years ago called Crab Rave. It's a song called Noise Storm, and there's just 3D animations of crabs dancing. And when the song came out 5 years ago, it became a meme, and just because, like, this, I don't know, like, watch the video and you'll understand why it's a meme. It is literally a crab rave. It is crabs dancing. Crazy. I'm also, like, I've been at PAX this weekend, and there's a Crab God Theater at PAX. I did an episode of Games and Feelings last year at the Crab God Theater at PAX. And I just, doing a show in a place called the Crab God Theater, like, it only goes downhill from there. My life. But, yeah, crabs, that's a meme. But the reason why I am mentioning the crabs and Henry Kissinger. So, all of the top comments on this video are people celebrating Henry Kissinger's death. Like, there's 336,000 comments. This video has 272 million views. It is from 5 years ago, and all of the top comments are from the last 2 days. It's so fucking funny. Like, everybody went to celebrate Henry Kissinger's death by going to the Crab Rave video, and that's just insane to me. It is kind of weird that young millennials and Gen Zers online have become weirdly obsessed with Henry Kissinger's death, given that, he was Secretary of State, like, decades before we were born. Like, most of the people posting these memes were not alive while Kissinger was in office, although he has been, like, still very present in the US government and, like, playing a hand in things, but that's not the point. So about this phenomenon of, like, young people being, like, really enthusiastic about Henry Kissinger dying, my friend Mark Yarm wrote an article about this in the Washington Post earlier this year in honor of Kissinger's 100th birthday. And in that article, he interviewed a PhD studying memes named Alex Turvey, who said, quote, Kissinger's firm refusal to die represents something bigger to people. Like, that there are evil forces bigger than you, that you don't have power over, and the memes are a way of sort of releasing some of that pent-up energy. I really like the way that he put it as pent-up energy, because, I mean, if you consider the comparison I made earlier about Donald Trump getting COVID in 2020, that was, like, such a celebratory, glorious day on the internet of people just being like, damn, this guy has been downplaying the severity of this virus and making policies that are leading to the spread of a virus that can be lethal. Like, there is blood on this man's hands, not to mention, like, literally everything else Donald Trump did during his presidency. But it was just this moment of, like, we got one thing to kind of feel like we could stick it to the man. And this was especially relevant for me because at the time I was working full-time as a political organizer. the most thankless job. I have such infinite respect for people that are still being political organizers for like longer than I did it, which was a couple months. And then I was like, I cannot. But I found out that Trump got COVID because I went to bed pretty early since I was working like 12-hour days in organizing because, that's what you have to do. And I wake up and I have like a million messages on various different platforms, and all of them are the same message from the head of communications at the place I was working that is sent to literally every employee and says, do not make jokes on the internet about Donald Trump having COVID, because they were worried that like oppositional groups would be like, haha, look at these like progressive young people. They're so progressive and they're making fun of someone for being sick. And I don't know. I mean, the fear-mongering around that kind of reminds me of the discourse now about like, are we bad people for celebrating Henry Kissinger's death? But like, I feel like it was different with Trump and COVID because this was before vaccines. We were all actively like freaking out and terrified of getting this thing, and we didn't really understand how it spread, and then the president got it. But like, we all die someday. Everyone dies. And I'm glad that death picked Henry Kissinger out of his little crane machine instead of someone who, wasn't responsible for 3 to 4 million people's deaths. Anyway, another theory I have is that the longer Henry Kissinger stayed alive, the more it became a meme. Like, this man lived to 100. That's really fucking old. And I feel like for years people have been doing that death crane game meme, and it is like this pent-up energy. Like, I'm so sorry for the most millennial chuggy metaphor of all time, but it's like when you're brewing kombucha and then when you open it and it just explodes. Like, that's what happened when Henry Kissinger died. That was like the worst thing I've ever said on this podcast. I'm so sorry, Isabel. This is what happens when Isabel isn't here to like balance me from I'm my own worst nightmare and my own worst critic. Whew. Yeah, but like more and more people knew about the meme of why won't Henry Kissinger die? Because he just wouldn't fucking die. And I think the same thing happened when the Queen died. People celebrated her death online as well because they saw her as the perfect symbol of white colonial hegemony in the UK. I can't say hegemony on our podcast. I said hegemony on our podcast. But she lived to 96. People thought there were theories that she was like already dead and it was like puppeting her around. I don't think that's true. But like, she also lived a really long time, and people were kind of just like, come on, when is she gonna kick the bucket? I don't know. I mean, people were going crazy on the internet when she died, and I personally remember the meme about how Trisha Paytas, who was she still is, a controversial YouTuber, gave birth pretty close to the Queen's death. And then there was a meme that the Queen had been reincarnated as this child of an extremely divisive internet figure, who, by the way, this child is named Malibu Barbie. So there have been some heroes made in this moment of internet hoopla of celebrating the demise of a war criminal. One of those is the Wikipedia editor that goes by A Sticky, or a Sticky, who knows? They were the person who had the honor of, on the Wikipedia page, changing the wording from Henry Kissinger is to Henry Kissinger was. And now she's like Wikipedia superstar. Everyone is celebrating. This person became like an instant icon. Queen shit. All right, I have 2 more just quick points I want to make on the topic of Henry Kissinger. I'm going to take a sip of my seltzer. This podcast is sponsored to you. See, I need the water. This is a joke. We're not sponsored by seltzer. Well, while I'm doing a fake ad break, might as well remind you, we do have merch, wowoftrue.com/merch. It's good. The sweatshirt is comfy. It's cold now. That's my ad. Yeah, okay. 2 more things. 1, Henry Kissinger was an investor in Theranos. Like, can we just, think about that for a second? Like, he was one of the reasons why Theranos was legitimized as a company, because people were like, well, if Henry Kissinger is invested and like he's like a wealthy, famous, powerful guy. Clearly that didn't go well, as many things that Henry Kissinger was involved with did not go well. The New York Times obituary of Henry Kissinger, one of the writers of the obituary died in 2010. So it's pretty normal practice in the journalism industry that if you work at a paper like the New York Times, where like you're going to need to run an obituary about Henry Kissinger's death, like you kind of just have people who, when they don't have a lot of work to do, their job is to just write these obituaries. Like this wouldn't happen at a place like TechCrunch because we're not like, I don't know. I guess like if Elon Musk died, yeah, I don't know. Do we have any pre-written obituaries? Because it has to be someone who you think is going to die soon. And that's what's funny about this, is because 13 years ago, Henry Kissinger was 87. And that's like a pretty old age. And so people were like pre-writing his obituary. But he stayed alive for so long that one of the writers isn't alive anymore. Like, imagine writing an obituary for someone who outlives you. That's really weird. And like, there's not a lot of circumstances that happens in, and I just find that, like, honestly really fascinating. I kind of want to sit with that for a little bit, because outside of this weird thing that people do in journalism, you're usually writing obituaries after people die, but you gotta be quick in the industry. Damn, that's crazy. I'm like having a real like existential moment now that I think about this. More internet news. So Spotify Wrapped came out the same day Henry Kissinger died. Of course, that inspired a bunch of jokes about how Henry Kissinger also called it a rap. Okay, here's my segue. I know Isabel's not here, but I still have to like point out my segues because I'm like, guys, look, I'm doing it. Hey. The prevailing joke with Spotify Wrapped is that Spotify added a feature to Wrapped called Sound Towns, which shows you what place has the most similar music taste to you. And way too many people got Burlington, Vermont. Like, a weird amount of people. I was like, what's going on here? Like, everyone is getting Burlington. So I went rogue and started compiling a spreadsheet of what people's top 5 most listened to artists were on their Spotify Wrapped, and who also got Vermont. And there was a lot of bands like Boy Genius, Big Thief, other music that is made by queer people and particularly popular among queer people, particularly young white queer people who live on the East Coast in like coastal liberal elite whatever kind of cities. Sometimes I poke fun of myself and call myself a coastal media liberal elite or whatever, because that's what the right would call me when it's like I'm recording this podcast in a little dungeon. But yeah, so a bunch of jokes started going around about how, like, if you get assigned Burlington, that means you're gay because you listened to a lot of Boy Genius. And I asked Spotify about the numbers behind this. They told me that Burlington only accounted for 0.6% of Spotify users' SoundCloud results, but there were 1,300 possible places, so that's still, like, disproportionate. Like, I can't do the math on demand, but if you had 100 cities and there was an even distribution of people assigned to each city, 1 out of 100 is 1%. This is 1,300, so an even distribution would be, like, exponents lower than 1%. And 0.6 is higher than that. So it is still disproportionate. Did I do math right? I don't know. I did the math when I was like legitimately calculating this before, but that just kind of was me explaining math on the fly. Damn, this podcast has everything. Person actively having like meltdown about the idea of obituaries and, thinking about her own mortality as she records a podcast alone in the little dungeon in her apartment that exists for some reason on a Friday night at 10:39. I'm fine. Everything's fine. So Berkeley and Cambridge were also very popular in sound towns, and I guess my theory about this is this is like music that is popular among college students or like people that are of that age. And Burlington, Berkeley, and Cambridge are homes to significant populations of university students. So maybe that's something. Although I did get DMs from people being like, you fucking idiot, it's because Fish is from there. But also Noah Kahan is from there. And he was really popular on a lot of these people's Spotify Wrapped, which I think contributes to it. And then I wondered if something was going on with Taylor Swift, since she was on the majority of people's Spotify Wrapped that I looked at. But then I realized it's just because she's too powerful. I mean, this shouldn't surprise anyone, but she was the #1 most streamed artist, which that's crazy. I don't know. I mean, in the West, we see Taylor Swift is just omnipresent, but think about all of the countries that use Spotify where Taylor Swift isn't, like, from there. Like, I'm sure that her biggest fan base is in America, where she's from, and we have media biases, so it feels like, to me, literally everyone knows everything about Taylor Swift. But that's not true of, like, random Spotify listener in, like, Laos. Okay, another seamless segue that I'm making, and it's not seamless because I'm acknowledging it. Taylor Swift. I think we're far enough into the podcast that, like, only the real Craigs are here. If you're new, like, honestly, like, thank you so much. It really means a lot to me that you're still there. I don't know why I'm, like, doing this. I don't know why I'm whispering, but we're far enough into the podcast that I can safely say Taylor Swift fans are crazy. And, like, listen, I'm crazy too. Like, I'm a Radiohead fan. There's a theory that the albums In Rainbows and OK Computer, which came out 10 years apart, are meant to be listened in, like, woven into each other, like one song from In Rainbows, one song from OK Computer, back and forth, back and forth. I believe that theory. It's bonkers. Do you think Tom York is, like, planning out his, like, band's schedule 10 years in advance? Maybe? Like, I don't know. I believe it, though. There's some other crazy Radiohead fan theories, like the album Kid A predicting 9/11, which, guys, I don't think that's what's happening. But Taylor Swift fans have similar, like, insane theories, and I learned about one this week that just blew my mind, and it's old news, but I just have to talk about it because, oh man, this threw me for a loop. So, I regret to inform you that I have to talk about Harry Potter, but I will mention the Curse series as little as possible, and at least this is about fanfic and not the IP. So, there's a fanfic called All the Young Dudes. It's a Marauders era Harry Potter fanfic that came out in, like, 2017 and 2018. It went super viral during the pandemic when people were stuck at home and, I guess, kind of, like, reminiscing about, oh, remember when I was a kid and I was really into Harry Potter? This was before we knew what we now know about J.K. Rowling, but All the Young Dudes, like, developed this really robust fandom around it, which is wild for a fanfic. And, I mean, it was the #1 fanfic on AO3, like, all of AO3. I don't think it is anymore, but it's still up there. But damn, that's wild. So a lot of people started noticing similarities between the fanfic and themes in Taylor Swift lyrics. There's a lot of Taylor Swift songs that people were like, what if this is sung from, like, Remus's perspective or Sirius's perspective? And I think people were just kind of playing around and being like, hey, look at these two things that we like, and how, I don't know, like, there's a lot of instances of people being like, damn, imagine this song sung from the perspective of this fictional character. But here's the thing. The author of All the Young Dudes goes by the screen name Miss King Bean 89. 1989, Taylor Swift, album of hers, year she was born. Swifties are obsessed with numerology. I think people just kind of took it and ran with it. I don't know, like, do people actually believe this? But the Swifties are incorrigible. So now people are saying Taylor Swift wrote All the Young Dudes. I think it's a joke, but I think some people aren't joking. But, like, I just love the idea of Taylor Swift on the Reputation tour writing Harry Potter fanfic in her dressing room. Like, this fic is 500,000 words long. This is like another situation in which it's really easy to blow things out of proportion, and I try to be careful about that as someone who like professionally explains the internet to people. I do think the majority of the people do not genuinely believe that Taylor Swift wrote this Harry Potter fanfic. But I did see a few TikToks that I was like, do they believe it? It's kind of fun to pretend, but like, where's the line between pretending and believing? Damn, deep stuff here. Oh, they call the theory Swift King Bean instead of Miss King Bean, and I think it's really funny. Sadly, I have another thing that relates to Harry Potter, but it's just so fucking insane I had to talk about it, and again, it's like about fan fiction, and I'm so sorry. I am sorry for my sins. Isabel is not here to be like, Amanda, shut the fuck up. You might have heard a few weeks ago that OpenAI, which is the company that makes ChatGPT, had this whole leadership kerfuffle. We still don't totally know what went down. Basically, it was like the Friday before Thanksgiving, a famously dull time in news. Like, whenever companies have bad news, they drop it on the Friday before a long weekend because they know everyone's checked out. So OpenAI just says that the CEO, Sam Altman, is out. No one knows why. They give this weird excuse of like he wasn't transparent with the board. But then people are like, what does that mean? Was he hiding something? Did he like do fraud? I mean, we've seen like Sam Bankman-Fried and Elizabeth Holmes and Anna Delvey and all these high profile cases of people doing like large scale financial crimes. So, of course, people immediately are like, is this another Sam Bankman-Fried situation? But Sam Altman seems not that dumb. So, OpenAI is probably one of the most influential tech companies right now. Like, they are leading the charge into developing AI. Their goal is to develop AGI, which is artificial general intelligence, aka AI that is smarter than humans, which is something that a lot of people are scared about. It's like the singularity. Like, what will happen when AI is smarter than us? Will they, like, take control of us and kill us all? That's what Eliezer Yudkowsky believes. Who's Eliezer Yudkowsky? He is the founder of the rationalist forum Less Wrong, and more importantly, the author of the fanfic Harry Potter and the Methods of Rationality. This is like a famous Harry Potter fanfic that it's like famously divisive. I listened to the audiobook version of it while I had food poisoning. Guess where? In Laos. I was like literally puking and shitting at the same time and just like listening to an audiobook of this really grating and weirdly fascinating, but like as like it's complicated. I wouldn't recommend it, but Harry Potter and the Methods of Rationality, forever associated with food poisoning in my brain. But yeah, so this guy Eliezer Yudkowsky wrote it. Why is this relevant to OpenAI? Eliezer Yudkowsky is an AI researcher, and he has been in the industry for many, many years. He has a character in the fanfic named Emmett Shear. It's like a little cameo, like not like a main character. Emmett Shear is the former CEO of Twitch, who took over as the interim CEO of OpenAI when Sam Altman was ousted. If you care about like what actually happened, we still don't really know, but long story short, there was a bunch of drama. Sam Altman is back. What happened? I guess we'll find out eventually. But it makes sense that Yudkowsky runs in the same circles as people like Emmett Shear because he is a researcher of AI and has been in the industry for a long time. Like, in 2011, a New Yorker writer, George Packer, wrote this feature on the, quote, techno-libertarians of Silicon Valley, which, yes, that sounds horrifying. And he's reporting from this dinner where he's at Peter Thiel's house, and he's, like, a venture capitalist who... we don't really like him. By we, I mean, like, people who think that there should be morality in tech. Yeah, he also was, like, responsible for the closure of Gawker. Like, I don't know. He's just, like, not our favorite dude. This isn't really the point at all, but he's very powerful in the tech industry. He was part of the quote-unquote PayPal mafia, which is, like, the early founders of PayPal, which includes people like Elon Musk. And yeah, so there's this dinner party. George Packer, the New Yorker writer, observes that blondes in black dresses are like waiting on them and like filling their wine cups. And then at the party is other PayPal co-founders, David Sachs and Luke Nosek. Then there's Patry Friedman, who, yeah, this guy was a former Google engineer who got funding from Peter Thiel to start a nonprofit that aims to build floating anarchist sea civilizations that were inspired by Burning Man. It's been 15 years. I don't think they've done it. Like, it's like this weird libertarian idea of like you're living on the sea and you don't have any rules, so you're like creating your own sea civilization. But as we talked about in the context of crypto land, probably on our episode with Molly White however long ago, you can't just like make an island civilization in the middle of nowhere. Like, I don't know, like read Lord of the Flies. Yeah, the reason I mention all of this is just like Eliezer Yudkowsky is at this party. The guy who wrote the Harry Potter fanfiction. Like, these are the circles he has been running in. And so I think this is relevant to the OpenAI kerfuffle because, one, just the Emmett Shear connection, like having the name of the interim CEO of OpenAI in your Harry Potter fanfiction is insane. And two, because I think that there's like some ideological stuff happening here. So a lot of the infighting that happened online during the OpenAI drama was tech people sort of thinking about what philosophy should drive tech forward. Should it be, one faction is called the effective accelerationists, which is like growth at all costs. The only way forward is to just keep on going because of the second law of thermodynamics. Like, basically just no regard for the impact of building tech. As long as you keep building the tech, they believe that any negative impact of building this tech will be solved by the tech itself. We know that's not true. I mean, look at the homelessness issue in San Francisco. Has tech solved that? Has tech been able to help the people it displaced? I don't think so. This stuff drives me crazy. But so, like, that's a group at play. Then there is the quote-unquote decels or safetyists who are, like, pro-growth of technology, like, people that work in tech, but they also believe in regulation and are a little worried about AI getting too strong for us to effectively regulate. Basically, Emmett Shear is more so, like, he called himself a doomer. And Eliezer Yudkowsky, who wrote a fanfic he liked so much that he requested for his name to be a cameo in it, is now a leader amongst the doomers. Like, he gave a TED talk basically about how, like, we're all gonna die. He wrote an essay in Time. Here's a quote from it. "If somebody builds a too powerful AI under present conditions, I expect that every single member of the human species and all biological life on Earth dies shortly thereafter." This was in response to when a bunch of researchers signed a petition for big AI companies to, like, stop developing things for 6 months, and Yudkowsky didn't sign it, and then wrote this article in Time about how 6 months is not enough and we're already doomed. It's a little extreme. I think, like a lot of things, extremism on either side has massive issues. I just can't help but find it fascinating that if you squint at the story, all of this can trace back to a Harry Potter fanfic. And that, like, internet culture and weird fandom shit is always present, even in the negotiations of who is going to lead probably one of the most important tech companies of our lifetimes that has the potential to, like, broach the singularity or whatever you say. I don't know. Was that anything? Did you get that? You can't talk back to me. But yeah, it's just kind of weird. I think I've mentioned this on the podcast before, but this fanfic and the forum that it is, like, part of, rationalism is sort of the idea that you have to make decisions with logic and that emotion can't, like, play a role in it. I don't really like that either, because I think I think emotions are a useful thing. I think rationalism can be very kind of intellectual circle jerk and not actually anything like helping people. Anyway, so Elon Musk and Grimes met through a joke that originated on the forum that Eliezer Yudkowsky founded. The joke is Roko's Basilisk. Roko was the person who posted on the forum and said, so what if there's an AI that has the potential to kill us all, but now, because I've said this to you, you know that there is possibly this AI. And what if when the AI becomes powerful, it kills anyone who didn't help it rise to power? So now, because you know about it, are you implicated in it? It's a paradox. I think it's kind of bullshit, but like, it got banned from being discussed on these forums, which just sort of like made it more of a thing. Like, it was kind of nothing, but because it got banned, people were like, oh my god. But one time Elon Musk wanted to tweet the joke, Rococo's Basilisk, and then he found out that Grimes had already made the joke, and that's how they started talking on the internet. And now we have the Grusk babies, and I lost a bet about him having a secret baby. What a life I lead. If you've listened the whole way, I genuinely really appreciate it, and I hope that we can all send our well wishes to Isabel as she gets, I believe she said, her shit slonked concussy style. She is mildly concussed in addition to being sick. Really just a perfect storm. You know, I might have just talked at nothing for 40 minutes, but at least I'm not in that situation. So, we'll have a normal episode back in your earbuds in 2 weeks. So, yeah, go birds. I don't know what to say anymore. Should I tell a joke? I don't have any jokes. So if you like this episode, tell a friend. Word of mouth is how we grow. Thank you to all of our patrons, and shout out specifically to Zoe, Bray, Andromeda, Thea, Brian, Gabriel, Lotta, Matt, Max, my sugar daddy, Sam. That's like Isabel's sugar daddy, Sam, not my sugar daddy, Sam. And Aaron's husband. If you want your name in the above or in our Twitter header, we really need to edit that. We're kind of behind on things. Slide right into our Patreon at patreon.com/wowtrue. Shout out to audio editors Allison Mills and David Newtown. I was gonna edit this episode on my own because it's just me talking, but then now that idea horrifies me, so shout out to them. Graphic design and Canva warlock Eric Silver, who made our logo. Eric Silver is currently in the same city as me. We were just hanging out before I recorded this podcast. Great times. Sam Rizer, who made our podcast music. I don't know why I'm just like talking about each person. Sam Rizer, also in my current city. And Tessa Farah, who is transcribing our episodes and is not currently here. You can find us on Twitter as @WowTruePod. Instagram and Facebook as @WowTrue, even though like we don't really post there. We only really post on Twitter, which is kind of lame. Had your 15 seconds of internet fame, slide right into our Twitter DMs and tell us about it. Yeah, on Spotify Wrapped, our most popular episode was the episode in which we interviewed someone whose butt went viral for a cool tattoo. So really, tell us about your internet fame. You might be our most popular episode on our Spotify Wrapped. Until next time, let's get famous on the internet, or let's get weird on the internet. Let's get friends on the internet, because I'm alone right now. No, okay, bye.